Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am delighted that we are having this hearing today. I thank you for this. And Ms. Wynne Williams, I want to thank you for stepping forward and for speaking. Senator Blumenthal and I last year brought forward the Kids Online Safety Act. And this is a piece of legislation we have worked on for years. It came through the Senate on a 91-3 vote. It failed in the House. As you would imagine, Meta spent millions of dollars lobbying against us and against the legislation, while at the same time they were claiming how much they cared for children and how they wanted to take care of children. And of course, one of the problems, as we have heard these heartbreaking stories from parents trying to reach out to Meta, no response, of the cyberbullying that was taking place, the pleas from principals and child psychiatrists to do something, and yet they would not do it. And I noted in your book that you talked about Meta targeting children with ads based on their emotional state. And if you want to talk about something that is cruel, I'm a mom and a grandma, and to kick a kid when they're down, that in essence is what it is kicking them while they're down. That is completely disgusting. And I find it so interesting that Mark Zuckerberg has said he's turned over a new leaf. My response to that was, leaves change color with the seasons of the year. And I am curious as to whether this is a season for him or if it is something that is truly going to be making a difference. And I think he should explain to us. He's been before this committee before, where he truly is. Now, one of the things we found out from other whistleblowers, and you mentioned in your book, that Meta's statement denying it engaged in targeting children was a flat-out lie, and the company had refused to audit these activities. We've heard that from other whistleblowers, that they were doing research and they knew what was happening, but they were so given to the dollar and having children as the product that they themselves, children were addicted, but also Facebook and their leadership team had become addicted to the power that they held and to the money that they were making. But talk to me a little bit about your experience with Meta and how they would choose to cover up or deny that they were harming kids.
Thank you, Senator. One example is that Facebook was targeting 13 to 17-year-olds. It could identify when they were feeling worthless or helpless or like a failure. And they would take that information and share it with advertisers. One of the things about advertising is advertisers understand that when people don't feel good about themselves, it's often a good time to pitch a product. You know, people are more likely to buy something. And so what the company was doing was letting these advertisers know that these 13 to 17-year-olds were feeling depressed and saying, now's a really good time to serve them an advertisement. Or if a 13-year-old girl would delete a selfie, that's a really good time to try and sell her a beauty product. Or if a 13-year-old girl is...
So let me interrupt right there.
Sure.
If she deleted a selfie, then Facebook was in essence, or Meta, Instagram, they were in essence tracking her activity online.
Absolutely. That
Okay.
was taken as a signal and then shared with advertisers.
So they didn't stay given specifically to their app. They traveled in the child's phone.
Absolutely so.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think it points up some of the harm that is there. One of the things I wanted we've talked about China and their launch of apps, Facebook's apps in China. I wanted to see if you could elaborate on the type data that would be found on Facebook servers located in China and the broader implications of allowing the CCP to have access to that data.
Senator, I mean, we've just spoken in your last question about, just one example of the amount of information that this company has. It is unfathomable. It's very, very hard to wrap your mind around the amount of data that this company has on each person who logs on to its service. It's private messages, but so much data. And all of that would channel through a POP server.
So then it is not just limited. The data Facebook holds or Meta holds is not just limited to the Meta applications.
Not at all, Senator.
So basically Meta has the ability to build what I call a virtual you of an individual, where they go, the transactions they have, the different apps that they rotate from one to another. Is that accurate?
Absolutely, Senator.
Okay, thank you. I've got one other question I want to come to you on, and we have heard not only from you, but from others, that Mark Zuckerberg would veto recommendations from his team when it came to improving practices that would protect children or would protect data. And he would do this because he would say it was too costly. And I just find that astounding. In the physical world, we have laws that protect an individual's privacy. We have laws that protect children and protect them from being exposed to certain harms like alcohol, tobacco, sales, meeting predators, pedophiles. So I wanted to know if you had witnessed that he or the other C-suite were actually vetoing recommendations that would have provided consumer protection and protection of children in the virtual space.
Yes, Senator, and as a mother of 3 children, that's one of the more difficult aspects to reconcile with this company, that it is not a company that looks after users, particularly those 13 to 17, which they regard as vulnerable yet very valuable.
And then how long were you employed at Facebook and when was your last day?
I was employed from 2011 and it's slightly complicated, but I finished in the end of 2017.
2017. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Dermott.
Thanks for being here. That reference that I opened up with, that you made in your book to a strategy, a message strategy for Meta, and someone suggested tobacco as kind of the guideline that you might want to follow, some dangerous product that was lessened in intensity to the public by misrepresentations. As I mentioned at the outset, I was part of the effort to bring them down. Didn't realize I'd reached a tipping point with smoking on airplanes, but it turned out to be one, and things changed. You make a reference as well in the book that a lot of the executives at Facebook protected their own children from what might have been an exploitation, which you've described here, the algorithm that analyzes your activity on the board and says, well, just deleted a selfie, good time for an ad. Somebody had put that together. So these executives at Facebook protected their own kids from that kind of exploitation, correct?
Senator, that was one of the things that shocked me when I moved to Silicon Valley, is that it's a place full of, wooden Montessori toys, and, executives would always speak about how they have screen bands in the house, or, I would say, oh, has your teen used the new product we're about to launch? And they're like, my teenager's not allowed on Facebook. I don't have my teenager on Instagram. Like, these executives, they know the harm that this product does. They don't allow their own teenagers to use the products that Meta develops. I mean, the hypocrisy is at every level.
So I wanted to just tell you a follow-up to that story. Eventually, the children of tobacco executives became my greatest fans and supporters. And they would basically shame their parents by saying that, the kids at school are saying this, or I just heard something, or I read something. Dad, tell me that you aren't part of that tobacco conspiracy to keep the truth from the American people. They became a force, a moral force in the conversation. It'd just be speculation, but I hope that that is the case here as well.
I hope you're right, Senator.
I read these things, and so I want to ask you a question that is more generic, but I'm just curious as to the decision process at the highest levels. When there is a decision being made about what you're going to turn over, what Facebook, Meta, is going to turn over to the Chinese, all their demands that you said the company denied to so many other countries, but for China, they made an exception. When the decision is being made about exposing American privacy material and data so that the Chinese would have access to it, Americans not knowing that. The security questions that you raised, the AI information is given to the Chinese that makes them, quote, more competitive, but also means that they have sources of information that could compromise the security of the United States. I mean, when you consider each one of these, they kind of grow in gravity and magnitude. Are these decisions being made strictly by Zuckerberg himself, or by boards, or by open discussion? How much sensitivity was there to the fact that the decisions were historic in nature and maybe even criminal?
It's a really interesting question. You asked me in part about China. To give you just one example, at the governance level, which is what you're asking me, the lead independent director on Meta's board was also on the payroll for the China project.
So that they had dual loyalty?
I think the question around accountability and governance of this company and of tech companies more generally, there needs to be a lot more accountability. I don't think the current governance structures are anywhere close to being sufficient.
Tell me that there were people at that company that you worked with that didn't sell out.
Absolutely. There were amazing people, and there are people who were horrified and had very strong moral conscience. And there are many of these people who've been in touch who, since these revelations have come out, have said, I was in those meetings, I remember this. There were people who spoke up, there were people, I regret to say that many of the people who spoke up are no longer at the company, but there are good people there, and there are people who have moral beliefs, and there certainly were, but that wasn't happening at the top of the company, that wasn't happening at the executive level, and what was striking was the absence of those types of discussions at the top of the company compared to what was happening with your average people who are working at the company.
And you say Mr. Zuckerberg himself prides himself on being a loyal American?
I think Mr. Zuckerberg would say he does.
Yes.
But I don't want to speak for him.
No, of course not. But I think the evidence that you've given us points in the other direction. Lying to Congress may be in the realm of a mortal sin, depending on your faith conviction, but certainly selling out the security and privacy of the United States is about as low as they go when it comes to big tech. Have you been in any conversations involving Section 230?
No, Senator.
All right, well, that's certainly a law that we're taking a close look at here, which shields companies like this from personal civil liability. Many of us believe the committee has voted accordingly that if they could be held accountable for their decisions in a court of law and find damages, money to money, that this would have more impact than some of the best speeches we could put together as members of Congress. So we're going to work on that. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for this hearing, but I particularly thank you because you've referred to in your testimony what you call in the book 3 pistols, which I think is your reference to your 3 children. You've done a great thing for them and for kids all across the world. Thank you for testifying today.
Thank you, Senator.
Ms. Wynne Williams, let me ask you a little bit more about the censorship tools that you've been asked about today, you've testified about, that were actually deployed in Hong Kong and Taiwan. And let's just, if we can, let's just look again at the privacy team email. Not that one. That one. Yeah, so this is, and just so members of the press understand, the committee's in possession of this document. We have blacked out, as you can see, we've blacked out the names of individuals here, but in the documents, we have those names. Of course, we'll follow all appropriate legal procedures, but just so the press understands, the committee is committed to doing a full investigation. We do understand and know who the people are on this chain. We can see who they are, and we can see the full course of the discussion. But I just want to emphasize something here. The update is they spoke with the China team. They flagged a potential course of potential complication of course of negotiations with the Chinese government. Let's just stop there for a second. Someone pointed out to you that Mark Zuckerberg testified under oath that he didn't know what the Chinese government's terms would be to operate Facebook in China because they were banned, quote unquote, in China. So he just had no idea. He was saying this as late as 2017, 2018. He just had no idea what the terms would be. That's just categorically false, isn't it?
Absolutely, Senator.
And this email shows that it is false, correct?
Correct.
In fact, what this email shows is Facebook is in very regularly close contact with members of the Chinese government, down to specifying how they want the censorship tools to work. They're giving feedback on it, back and forth and back and forth. And here they've agreed on a set of censorship tools to deploy in Hong Kong, down to the fact that they say we're going to have to actually re-TOS. Does that mean terms of service?
Correct.
So in other words, they're going to have to push out to Hong Kong users a new click thing for them to click on, which they won't, of course, really understand or know because it's almost impossible to decipher. But in fact, what they're doing is it's allowing Facebook to stand up new censorship tools on behalf of the Chinese government. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, here's another interesting point. Back in 2012, the FTC here in this country, the FTC entered a consent decree with Facebook about privacy. Do you remember, Ms. Wynne Williams, this would have been early on in your time with the company, but do you remember roughly any of the terms of that FTC consent decree? Because they are relevant here.
I do, Senator. They were intended to prevent Meta from deceiving people about the extent to which they collect and share their data.
Yes, so the part of the order is, and let me just quote, Facebook shall, quote, shall not misrepresent in any manner, expressly or by implication, the extent to which it maintains the privacy or security of covered information, end quote, which is user data. Now, Facebook is under a consent decree with the FTC on this basis, and yet they are deliberately misrepresenting across the world the security of user data. They are negotiating with the Chinese government to turn over user data, grant the Chinese government access to Chinese user data, including the Hong Kongese, including Taiwan, and yet they're representing to American government officials, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. In fact, they testified under oath. We don't make user data available. All of that was just lies. Is that fair to say, Ms. Wynne Williams?
Senator, many decisions have been made, and they were all premised on the basis that Meta would hand over Chinese user data to the Chinese Communist Party.
So in addition to lying to Congress on what seems like a fairly regular basis, lying about suppressing dissidents, lying about setting up censorship tools, they've also arguably violated FTC consent decrees. And we have the documentation. This isn't just Ms. Wynne Williams' opinion. This isn't just her recollection. We have the documentation with the Facebook employees, who I might add are high-level, executive-level employees, who are planning this and doing this. It's really...
Great, awesome.
They're not talking to me about boxes, right? Yep, this is me. Okay.
Trump is signing his executive order.
Market's closing in a minute here. I'm assuming it'll still be. You can usually. It's just, it's not the big of a deal.
Fantastic as the speaker, I appreciate it. We won the state, Matt, and
we did.
You helped me a lot.
I did, and you made me speaker, so thank you, Mr. President.
That's good too. And Gretchen, I think everybody knows. So we're working on that very hard, and I think we'll come home with a winner for Michigan. Okay? I just spoke with the Secretary of Defense. Sometimes we call him the Secretary of War. It used to be called the Secretary of War. They changed it when we became a little bit politically correct. But I think we're in great shape. We're going to be in great shape. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much, Matt. Congratulations. Great job. So we'll start with the first orders. And I think we have one for a man named Mike Huckabee. Does anyone know Mike Huckabee?
Yes, sir.
He's going to be a great ambassador to Israel. And they're thrilled to have him, that I can tell you. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So the Senate confirmed Governor Huckabee to be your next mission as ambassador. And then we also have a transmittal letter to the President of Israel requesting that he accept.
Too big in Israel.
That's just the third letter.
I had to clear that up.
Well said.
An independent news media.
I think every citizen has seen the consequences of these actions, and I think we're all the poorer for it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. When discussing the role that political ads play in Facebook's business, you observed that peddling, not just being in this business of politics, and how we know how negativity is awarded online, not just Facebook, in all of the algorithms in these companies, and it's actually completely changed the ecosystem that we work in. Can you elaborate more on how stoking political outrage is profitable for Facebook and ramifications for democracy?
I think we're all living with the consequences of this every day. As I said before, what this company wants is to dominate as much time and attention as it can of every, not just in this country, as many billions as they can. And what they've learned is that outrage is a really good way to do that, but it doesn't, whatever it takes to have people glued to these services in their power, in their thrall, they'll do it.
The major focus of this hearing, of course, on China, and I have to say that I found that whole piece of this ironic, because when Senator Grassley and I were trying to pass our bill about the self-preferencing, which was also, of course, got the ire of Google and Amazon, these other companies. You remember that day well when we had the hearing, Senator Hawley, the markup on this bill. Well, one of the things that kept being thrown in my face and in those of others that work on this is China. You're actually going to destroy us, and then China will dominate. And at one point, another senator actually said that that was what national security officials said. And anticipating that, I'd actually gone around to the then head of the FBI, the head of the CIA. I'd called them all or seen them at things. And while they were getting in the business of endorsing, they said, no, this idea of doing something about putting consumer protections in and saying you can't put your own product all the time at the top of the search engine, that did not hurt our national security vis-a-vis China, but that is what they claim, and that's what's so interesting about your experience and your testimony. And your book actually reveals the extent to which Facebook was willing to put growth over the U.S. national interest to gain favor with the Chinese Communist Party, as you point out in your testimony today. In fact, and I know Senator Grassley asked you about this, you wrote, Meta started briefing the Communist Party as early as 2015. You talked about this today. The explicit goal being to help China outcompete American companies. Could you elaborate on that?
I think to pick up on your point, Senator, Meta is very quick to say, don't do anything that can hurt us because you'll let China win. You know, you'll let China win on AI. You'll let China win and gain the technological advantage. And the whole time, the company that's done the most to help China gain a technological advantage is Meta.
Mm-hmm. So do you believe Facebook is an honest broker? This is called a softball. When it claims competition reforms would harm the U.S. ability to compete with China? Because I'm telling you, we hear this all the time. So every time we try to bring up any of these bills.
I hope what we've discussed today, Senator, helps you push back very firmly and gives you something to create some real accountability.
And then finally, Senator Cruz and I mentioned we have this bill, Take It Down, that's passed the Senate. Just your view that if Meta puts its considerable engineering expertise toward the problem of removing non-consensual intimate images that have the power to ruin lives, or even the selling of fentanyl or some of these other things, do you think they could do it?
Senator, they've shown to the Chinese Communist Party that when they're motivated to get something, to remove something, they can be absolutely expert in it very fast.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be interested in knowing, Ms. Williams, when Meta first tried to silence you, when they first contacted you, what was said to you, and I assume it was in the nature of a threat and a warning of some kind.
Yes, Senator, I have had some very, I'm trying to find the right word, aggressive threats from this company, and the last 4 weeks have been very difficult.
Apart from the threats in a judicial setting, have there been others?
There have been a number of things, Senator, yes, yeah.
Would you prefer to tell us about that in private?
No, it's okay, I can, sorry, it's hard, but I can talk about it, yeah. So Meta has said, so even the choice to come to speak to Congress was incredibly difficult. Maybe it's helpful if I read what they told me.
Please do.
They said, the purpose of, sorry, they said if the respondent, well, if me, if I were permitted to communicate with legislators, that's you, such actions would create an exception to non-disparagement that it would eat the rule. In such circumstance, nothing would limit or prevent those legislators or their aides from parroting to the public any disparaging statements. And I just want to pause here because a disparaging, it's telling you the truth. Clear that even coming to speak to you about the truth and about the concerns of national security and protecting our children and sharing these truths with you, that would have not only $50,000 for each truthful statement, actual damages for breach of confidentiality, actual and punitive damages for fraud and other claims.
So let me just be clear. In effect, they are warning you against what we might say publicly based on your comments.
That is a potential consequence. That is the order they have secured.
That, in effect, you'd be held responsible for what we might say as a result of your truthful testimony.
Not just you, senators, something your aide might say. I mean, they frame it as something your aide might parrot.
In other words, what these folks in back of us might say, as well as what we might say.
Even though it's factual and true.
Even though it's factually true. In effect, I mean, now that you mention it, it creates pressure on us not to tell the truth to the American public, is the way I view it. It's, in a sense, threatening you and thereby putting pressure on us because we could have to worry about harming you as a result.
Please don't worry about harming me.
And when did they first contact you? I guess when they became aware of your book, or?
Well, that's right. They put out public statements when they first became aware of the book. But they also effectively tried to, I mean, I don't know I'm learning very fast about the system of arbitration, which seems incredibly unjust. But they sought to game that. They said that they had notified me of an arbitration. They didn't. They have my they have my email on file. They have so many ways to contact me. I worked for them for a long time. Most of the senior executive have emailed me, but they chose not to notify me through that email address. So I was not able.
They issued a public statement. So they first went public and then contacted you.
Well, they didn't contact me, but yes, Senator.
And what did they do to start the arbitration process?
They started it without me. They secured the order without me.
Without any representation?
That's correct, because I was not aware of it. They'd sent it to an email address from 2007.
And my understanding is that you were regularly communicating with Meta, but they still used a defunct email address to serve the notice of the emergency arbitration. You were provided no notice of the proceeding, the appointment of an emergency arbitrator without your legal team knowing or having opportunity to object, and the initial hearing took place without anybody from your legal team participating.
Yeah, I didn't know about it, so I couldn't participate in it.
And once they had an emergency gag order in hand, they knew how to reach you, correct?
Senator, I was, well, honestly, I was trying to get my toddler to eat some oatmeal, and the doorbell went, and it's a little embarrassing, but it was just after the book had published, so I thought it might have been someone delivering flowers. No, it was a gag order.
So Meta's flowers were a gag order, and they knew where you were. They had no trouble reaching you with the emergency gag order. They didn't bother letting you know about the arbitration process or anything before they got what they wanted.
They obviously knew where my home was the entire time.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that this experience is kind of a textbook example of the kind of problems that we hear from our constituents relating to forced arbitration. I happen to be the lead sponsor in the Senate of the Forced Arbitration and Justice Repeal Act, known as the FAIR Act, which would end these kinds of abusive clauses that enabled them to do what they did with you, Ms. Wynne-Williams. Just so we're absolutely clear, they're trying to force you to pay them this $50,000 in liquidated damages for each so-called disparaging comment, true comments, which they regard as unfavorable to them, even when you tell the truth about their misconduct, correct?
That's correct, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Before we let you go, Ms. Wynne-Williams, just one other line of questions, if I could, just one other subject. You actually touched on it with Senator Blackburn. She was talking to you about the kind of research that Facebook has done and the kind of advertising that they're willing to sell. And to me, what's so interesting about this is we've seen, frankly, the moral bankruptcy of this company and its leadership when it comes to China. And we've seen them be willing to lie to Congress, lie to the American public. We've got the documents in black and white. We've seen them be willing to give away American user data. But they were also trying to find out a way to make a buck on Americans, teenagers, children in times of distress right here in the United States. And I just want to give you an opportunity to comment on this. Accurate that Facebook is doing research into young mothers and their emotional state. Is it your understanding if there's other research related to young mothers? Answer, yes. I looked at one list of research topics and saw one about young mothers and their emotional state. Coming down, the person says, I'm wondering about asking my apparently morally bankrupt colleagues if they are aware of any more. This is about Facebook's program to target ads to people when they are in emotional distress. Is that right? Is that what we're seeing here?
That's correct, Senator.
And that included teenage girls, as you were discussing with Senator Blackburn, those who had maybe recently deleted a selfie, maybe not feeling very good about themselves, and Facebook said, oh, fantastic opportunity. We could sell this to advertisers. It apparently also included young mothers who are in moments of distress. I mean, who knows what that might include? Everything from the spilled oatmeal you were trying to put into your toddler's mouth. I have 3 children, so I understand. Or who knows what, much, much worse things. So Facebook is constantly looking for opportunities to sell to advertisers, to make a buck, even on their own users, and they're doing it by tracking their users all over the place, tracking their emotional state. I mean, have I got that accurate?
You've got that accurate, and beyond that, it's things like things that often do concern teen girls, like body confidence. You know, that's something else that they use to target, you know, weight loss or other things on you know, children, really, 13 to 17-year-olds.
So, to your knowledge, did Facebook, after this email exchange, you know, where another user says, I think it's a slippery slope here, and then there's the admission, there is a level of behavioral targeting. I mean, just to be clear, I want everybody to see this. There is a level of behavioral targeting. I mean, these are Facebook executives. Again, this is a policy director in this chat acknowledging that this is what Facebook is doing. Did it stop? Did Facebook stop doing this?
Not to my knowledge, Senator.
Yeah, in fact, we know they didn't because other whistleblowers came forward to show that at Instagram, owned by Facebook, there was explicit targeting that goes on. There was explicit knowledge that the Instagram product was causing, in some cases, severe emotional distress, particularly to young girls. Facebook kept right on doing it anyway. Is that just because it made them a bunch of money?
Senator, you know, as a mother of 3 children, it's very hard to say this, but yes, the one of the discussions I had with one of the business leaders was like, we just don't need to do this. Like, as a company, Meta's now $1 trillion company. It is not short of money. It doesn't need to do this. And what he explained to me is like, we've got the most valuable segment of.
I think what we've seen here is the evidence that you presented, the evidence that we have in black and white is a company and leadership that is willing to do anything, work with America's chief competitor, work with our chief adversary, sell out other American businesses, sell out American user data, lie to Congress, lie to the public, anything in order to amass more power and make a buck. Can I just ask you, you know Mark Zuckerberg very well, you spent a lot of time with him. He's recently tried a reinvention in which he is now a great advocate of free speech after being an advocate of censorship in China and in this country for years, after suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story, after working hand in glove with the Biden administration to suppress content on COVID, to suppress content on masks, to suppress content on election questions, on vaccines. All of that, now that's all wiped away. Now he's on Joe Rogan and says that he is Mr. Free Speech, he is Mr. MAGA, he's a whole new man, and his company they're a whole new company. Do you buy this latest reinvention of Mark Zuckerberg?
Senator, there are two things. If he is such a fan of freedom of speech, why is he trying to silence me? And the other thing is that this is a man who wears many different costumes. When I was there, he, wanted the president of China to name his first child. He was learning Mandarin. That was, he was censoring to his heart's content. Now his new costume is MMA fighting or whatever, free speech. We don't know what the next costume's going to be, but it'll be something different. It's whatever gets him closest to power.
If he were here, is there anything you'd like to say to him?
Senator, I have a lot of questions for Mark Zuckerberg, but he has proven time and time again that you cannot believe his answers. He's lied to members of Congress, he's lied to his employees, and he's lied to Americans. And that's why I'm asking this committee to hold him accountable.
Well, we're going to do that. And I just have to say, I don't trust his latest reinvention at all. He sat where you have sat in front of this committee multiple times in my short time in the Senate. Every time it's a different answer. Every time it's a different facade. But every time, the one consistent through line is every time it's something misleading. Every time it's something other than the truth. Every time it's about Mark Zuckerberg, not the American people. It's about Mark Zuckerberg, not what's good for this country, not what's good for his users, not what is the truth. And I, for one, am very tired of it. So I have a message to Mark Zuckerberg as well, which is that it's time for you to tell the truth. You should come to this committee and take an oath and sit where Ms. Wynne Williams is sitting now and answer this evidence. Stop trying to silence her, stop trying to gag her, stop trying to hide behind your lawyers and millions of dollars in legal fees you're trying to impose on her. Stop threatening other whistleblowers. Come to this committee, take the oath, sit there, let us question you, and give the American people the truth. We will be waiting for you. Senator, anything further?
Well said, Mr. Chairman. I associate myself with your remarks, and what I would say to him is stop silencing Ms. Wynne Williams, for starters. And I go along with you that he ought to come here and tell the truth. I just want to clarify that the statement on speaking to Congress was from the arbitrator. Is that right?
The arbitrator that Meta saw.
The arbitrator that Meta obtained, and the gag order is going to be the last time you're allowed to speak, if we have anything to do with it. What I would say to Mark Zuckerberg is stop gagging Ms. Wynne Williams. Let her speak the truth, and you come here and tell us your version of the truth, if you have the guts to do it. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
I can promise you, Ms. Wynne Williams, that this will not be the end. This is just the beginning. We are going to get the truth, and you have done a great service to the American people by telling the truth here today. Thank you for being willing to do it. With that, this committee is adjourned.
outside a little bit too. I would say this though outside. This location is really good to get the. I wouldn't say every time. I mean, I'm feeling this. So, that's where you put the capital. See?
Whose team are you on, Carter? Really? I was looking like this was crazy. Okay.